Welcome to another edition of Anglican Unscripted. This is episode 928. I'm Kevin Kallsen.
I'm George Conger. Today is August 12th, 2025.
All right, welcome to another episode of Anglican Unscripted. We're so glad you could be here. This is our happy place. It's not like trans meditation. This is like, oh, you guys need to know some stuff. We know the stuff. We're going to tell you the stuff. And that's what happens here on Anglican Unscripted as we go through the stories across the internet. Before we get too far into the show, this is a great time to like the episode. You're not lying. It's not bad. You're just saying it's not bad. You click that little thumb. Please share this episode with friends, family, and foe. They want to see it too. They just don't know that yet. Go to the comments section. That's where the show continues. You guys are so wonderful and putting the comments. We agree with you. We disagree with you. You didn't know this. You did know this. You can't pronounce that correctly. What's your problem? And by the way, it's not Stuart. Okay? His name is Steve. Okay. All right. Okay. We get it. Thank you. I'll listen more closely for that. But, we gotta let you know we're aged, okay? This isn't 45-year-old Kevin on an airplane going all over the world for Anglican TV. It's not 48-year-old George many years ago trying to pre-wrinkles cover the news. This is we're in our senior years now, George. In fact, how are you feeling?
I'm tired. My joints hurts. It's hot outside. I'm slowing down, but I'm enjoying life.
No, it's been great, and the recent news has obviously led to a larger audience for Anglican Unscripted. We're appreciative of that, and we want you to know that you need to pray for us. Covering stuff on the front lines of Christian and Anglican news kind of puts us in the spotlight of the enemy, and we would appreciate that if you would keep George and I in your tender prayers.
Kevin, would you explain to some of the newer viewers what unscripted means?
Okay.
Because there seems to be a misapprehension of what we're doing.
Okay, well, we're basically a news program. This is a news format program backing up the content of Anglican.inc, a website that covers Anglican stories and many Christian stories that appear on the internet. And George and I have been covering Anglican news for 20 years. In fact, this is our 20th anniversary of Anglican TV, and the 20th anniversary, I think, or that's next year, of Hope in the Future, where George and I first met. And the next year we spent a week under a Tahiti bar in Tanzania drinking Diet Cokes, developing a friendship as we talked about.
Malaria, dysentery.
Yes. And so we've been doing this a long time. And Unscripted is a expression of our friendship, our desire to let you know what's going on in the world, and our desire to give you the good news. Because at the end of the day, we know how the story ends, despite the struggles of God having to use men and women to lead the church. Okay.
And when we say unscripted, we have a story list where we'll have a story name and maybe a line explaining it. But if you want the blow-by-blow details, that's what you go to Anglican Inc. for. That's the written word, as opposed to our discussion of the story itself. So we'll mess up names. We'll remember one thing when it was somebody else. But that's the difference between the two formats. One is sort of a spontaneous, lively exchange of ideas and thinking, while the other is straightforward, old-fashioned, hopefully nonpartisan news.
We don't, unscripted, we don't read a script here. George dutifully spends a half hour, an hour the night before the show putting together a little outline of the stuff that he thinks we need to talk about. I'll add to that. We need to talk about this too. And so we'll have a format of between 5 and 10, sometimes 13 different stories. And we sit down and we just read through them before the show, bouncing ideas off each other, making sure we both know the full context of the stories we're talking about. Boom, at a certain time after we pray and after we take our bathroom break before the show, we sit down and we give you what we've discovered and what you need to know. And on that note, George, let's pull up the show notes. The first story is going to be the continuation of the Stuart Ruck III trial. It continues again according to a document I have from the head office. On August 11th was yesterday. And a lot has happened in the last week since our show. And I'm kind of wondering if the trial actually continued yesterday or not. So let's talk about the latest news regarding this, George.
Well, every Monday, but every Tuesday when we record, it seems later that afternoon, new items hit. So this may be a week old for some of you, but it wasn't covered last week because we recorded before it was publicly announced. Yeah. The Diocese of South Carolina, the Anglican Diocese of South Carolina, based in Charleston, has intervened publicly in the whole Ruck affair. Now, what do I mean by intervene? The standing committee released a letter that is quite extraordinary. You can read the whole letter itself in the on Anglican Inc., or you can go to the South Carolina webpage. But essentially, they're saying we want a full investigation, independent investigation of the handling of this trial, because if the charges leveled by Rachel Thibault and essentially confirmed by Alan Runyon's, the attorney's, first letter, then we have a massive problem going on here of miscarriage and misconduct, miscarriage of justice and misconduct. So we call for an independent investigation of how the national church, the office of the Archbishop, handled this. Who decided to reject the legal advice of Alan Runyon and just ram through this trial, come hell or high water? Mm-hmm. Who made that decision? Who permitted the presiding officer? And we've since been, one of our viewers told us the name, but we decided not to bring that up because I don't know this guy from Adam, so I can't tell you anything. But so the presiding officer, who's not the judge, not the head of a court, but the presiding officer, who gave him permission? And how is that vetted? And why was this information withheld from the prosecution? So they have some very hard questions to ask of the process. And what this, and the second thing is the president of the court is the assistant bishop of South Carolina, Bishop Bryan. And they have suspended Bryan from episcopal duties in the diocese until this is all done.
Not his diocese, but the Diocese of South Carolina.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. He's an assistant in South Carolina, and he's also an assistant in Steve Wood's diocese of the Carolinas. Mm-hmm. So this is a shot at Archbishop Wood that you've mishandled this. You've and the Archbishop's office. Remember, the College of Bishops allegedly has signed off on the statement, all we had to do was hear one side of the story and we're perfectly content and happy. What happened afterwards? We had bishop after bishop come out and say, well, I wasn't there.
I was on vacation.
I was on vacation, or I abstained. Yeah. We've had nobody come and defend the process at the Episcopal level. There have been a bunch of people on the internet going, my country, right or wrong, if my bishop says it was okay, even though he didn't tell us, and we're just saying that he did it, then it's okay with me because I trust my bishop. Apart from that, there's nobody of substance or consequence who is saying this process is on the up and up.
Well, that's the big difference between this and many stories we cover. A lot of times we'll cover a story and we will hear from people at different levels of leadership say, Kevin and George, you got it right. Here's more information. Kevin and George are a little off. Let me correct your story here, and we'll print the corrections. Or Kevin and George, like in the Chuck Murphy thing, you are evil and must be taken care of. And there's no flow back at all. And I hear crickets. The only response we get is an occasional email or press release from ACNA headquarters. Other than that, it's crickets out there, George.
Well, we should say there is one area of pushback, and that is you shouldn't be talking about this.
True.
You should not be reporting bad news or news that makes the ACNA look bad. Which is not pushback. Which is not saying, no, you guys are wrong. You've got the wrong end of the stick. Rather, this is don't make noise. Don't stir up the mud.
Kevin and George, you're allowed to hold any other province accountable. You're allowed to look through and make sure they're transparent, make sure there's no hypocrisy. But for the love of God, Kevin and George, don't look towards the ACNA. They're still going through growing pains. They're not mature enough yet to handle this. They'll never be mature enough if they can't handle this.
So where are we today? Well, according to the press statements, the trial should have resumed. Don't know if it has or not. There's been no subsequent follow-up. We've had no public response from the Archbishop's office to the South Carolina letter. Mount Pleasant to Charleston, what's that, about 20-minute drive?
Right over the bridge.
Right over the bridge? Huh? Maybe it takes a little longer in South Carolina to deliver the mail or whatnot, but we've had no... This is bad.
This is disappointing. This is bad. And the inability of the new leadership of the ACNA to be communicative in any way except to say, guys, this is complex. They said that. This is too complex to respond to every... No, it's not too complex. You're being called out now by a diocese who wants to know, hey, what the hell is going on here? A very highly intelligent lawyer, Rachel Tabot, wrote a letter saying things are corrupt at all levels. Her boss, Attorney Runyon, said there should be a mistrial. He got up and quit. You're saying everything's A-okay.
Oh, and they have non-disclosure agreements, so they can't say anything. Except when they don't have non-disclosure agreements, because some of them are saying, I didn't sign anything.
What are you talking about? Okay, so no, this story's not going away anytime soon. My recommendation is for bishops who just want to know what's going on, ask questions. And if you really want to know what's going on, you're going to have to, with this new administration, ask questions publicly. That's what we've seen so far. George, let's move on to our second story. Nigeria is in the news, but it's more of a mission here in America. Now, this goes all the way back to the formation of the ACNA when Uganda, Tanzania, Kenya, and many other nations offered to help Americans reform an Anglican presence here in America. And archbishops over there said, listen, I'm going to sponsor John Guernsey. I'm going to sponsor Bishop Atwood. I'm going to sponsor... You can just go through the whole list of how they early set up sponsorship here and DOMA, for all intents and purposes, to get the ball rolling for a new province here. And part of them was Nigeria. Nigeria is strong, full of frontiersmen, and set up their congregations and dioceses here. And once all the sparks were done and we had a good, strong ACNA, Uganda said, good, we're done. Good job, guys. We're out of here. Tanzania, we're done. You guys are doing good. Congo, out of here. Even Rwanda, of all places, said, Chuck, we're done. However, Nigeria was the last nation to pull out. And they still haven't fully pulled out yet. And I remember talking to a previous archbishop of the ACNA and his frustration with Nigeria about their lack of reasons to pull out.
Well,
more to the story.
Well, they did pull out. They turned over the diocese to the ACNA, and they basically change the remaining ethnic, if you will, ethnic nationalist Nigerian congregations that did not want to be part of the ACNA into the Church of Nigeria North American Mission,
right?
CONNAM.
What?
Not Conan the Barbarian.
I thought that was Con Man. I'm reading it so
CONNAM.
wrong. CONNAM. Okay, sorry.
And it is a missionary jurisdiction. It's not a diocese.
Okay.
It's led by a American-based Nigerian bishop, Martin Anagbogu. And he had some interesting things to say. At an ordination service at the end of July, he made the claim that the ACNA, the reason why he would not want his people, the remaining Church of Nigeria people in the United States, join the ACNA is because the ACNA is secretly gay. It's pro-gay. They may talk about this, but allowing all this craziness from C4SO and not being forthright and honest and, immediately cutting all this off, that means that they are secretly in bed with these people. And I cannot allow my wonderful Nigerian brothers and sisters to go into this corrupt organization. Well, of course, this caused a firestorm, saying, who does this guy think he is? He's not being truthful. Yes, there may have been a church here or there, a rector here or there. Who
a certain email that said, "Dear gay Anglican." Yeah, sure.
Okay, but is the ACNA secretly pro-gay? No, it's not. Well, this fellow then, Bishop Martin, wrote a letter of apology to Archbishop Wood, taking back everything he said, saying it was all untrue. He apologized. He knew this was not the truth. So he was sat on by the Church of Nigeria from on high to write this apology letter. And then a few days later, he goes back onto social media and repeats the same claims, telling so what's going on here? This man has a nice little power base in the United States that he doesn't want to give up. And so he is throwing dirt and mud at the Nigerians who have gone to the ACNA, people like Bishop Felix Orji, who are now, in his mind, secretly pro-gay, which is a joke. It's an offensive joke.
He's an outstanding bishop, absolutely.
Yeah.
So.
And so this fellow, basically, Church of Nigeria is 20 million plus people, and it's got over 100 plus bishops, 150, I think, but now round numbers. Some of them are not so great. We had some problems with some prosperity gospel bishops, where these people, were into the name it and claim it and stuff. And the Church of Nigeria had to sit on them. So with a church this big and growing so rapidly, you're going to get some people who aren't up to snuff. And then you're going to get some people who basically are adventurers, who are frontiersmen, who are entrepreneurs in a religious world. This fellow has made his home in the U.S. and has got a good thing going, and he doesn't want to be under the Nigeria is far away. They don't know what he's up to.
No, he's got a good thing going, George. Yeah.
But if he's under the thumb of the ACNA, he's got to conform to the canons and constitution and conduct himself accordingly. Mm-hmm. So he apologizes, and then when the gaze is averted from Lagos or from Abuja, he starts up again. So what is this telling us? What is this telling us?
It's simple. I mean, he wants to keep his job. The best way to do that, his church loves him. Let's be honest here. The people who attend his church love him. He's doing a great job, and he doesn't want to lose any of that. He's comfortable. Okay? And to keep the head office from looking his way, he just has to say, I'm here selling something that's very Nigerian in a very hostile culture of America.
And I would add to that, there's a weakness at the top of the ACNA that allows him to get away with this.
Very weak.
In other words, a weak archbishop, a weak archbishop's office is not a threat. Mm-hmm. this wouldn't have happened in under other regimes in the ACNA, because the Archbishop had a degree of gravitas and power, and you, when he said jump, you said how high. But the weakness, currently at the top, and we touched upon this in the Rook trial, we touched upon this last week in the Incarnation Williamsburg business, we've touched upon this in the Calvin Robinson affair, of sort of, as Calvin Robinson likes to say, there's a two-tier system of justice in the ACNA. One for Anglo-Catholics and one for pro-women's orders zealots. I don't think it's true.
No,
but
I don't see that, but it's coming out where a person can look at the ACNA and say, maybe they are that way. Yet right now, as far as I can tell, the leadership in the ACNA is lacking, and they're not being questioned strongly enough by the second-tier bishops. Nobody's saying anything.
So were I to give advice for the ACNA's office, send somebody on the plane to Nigeria, or you go yourself and say, look, cut the crap. If you're going to have one of your bishops slander me, then we will basically point out, the falsity of this in the Nigerian press, that you allow somebody basically to say these near criminal things with malice. And how is this displaying Christian ethics and virtue by lying so as to give yourself a comfortable life?
No.
But are they doing this? I don't know. They might be, and if they are doing it, then it's not. No one's paying any attention.
They are not. And I thought Archbishop Wood had just flown over there to one of the countries, Uganda or Nigeria, to the cathedral for something. I don't remember.
He was in Nigeria earlier in the year, and he was in Kenya recently. And
well, all right, let's move on to our next story. And
but also, the other thing, this is also where GAFCON's administrative office needs to speak up and say, cut out the crap, fellas.
Yeah.
Each diocese, each province has got some bad bishops, and you got to clean and police these guys, because it's no longer what happens in Nigeria stays in Nigeria. What happens in the U.S. stays in the U.S. It spreads everywhere.
It does.
And this is an example of GAFCON's leadership saying, knock it off.
In fact, the Nigerian communication system is up and running just fine. They have a great national press system. They also have a great church press. The Anglican Church in Nigeria is very good at communicating on the internet and around the world. So it would behoove the ACNA and GAFCON to be sure that your side is represented in what's going on out there. On to more stories. We're going to do an update. We talked about Incarnation of Williamsburg here in Doma, the Diocese of the Mid-Atlantic, now for 3 or 4 weeks. And we reported that the Bishop Chris Warner of Doma had interfered with the interworkings of the vestry and the church in pushing a pro-women's stance. We're going to update that story now, because there's always two sides to the story. And I had friend of Anglican Unscripted, Jeff Walton, visit the church, and he gave me a little update. But George, you got a couple emails and some more information. What do you know?
Well, we presented essentially one side of the story last week based on our conversations, and people responded, and some were in touch, and they gave a different perspective. And I'll just summarize the bullet points. They said the congregation Incarnation on the whole was relaxed about women's orders. Doesn't mean they're zealots about it, but it just wasn't the thing that they got up in the morning and thought about. Second, the congregation did not want to join a new diocese as a whole, and that many saw Bishop Warner's help in their transition as a positive thing. And so that the charges leveled by the vestry, the outgoing vestry, of interference, nobody's really disputed the facts of that.
Yeah, we don't have any disputing of the facts.
So the issue, did Now, this is a parish; it's not a mission. So Bishop Warner just can't come in and fire a vicar and remove a vestry on his personal fiat. There are canons and constitutional rules, state church law, state of Virginia corporation law, right, how you do these things. And from everything we've seen from both sides now, Bishop Warner did not do the right thing. The question that's up in the air is, how popular was what he did? Now, some people say that 2/3 of the congregation have left, but you had a friend, Kevin, go down this past Sunday, and what did they find?
Well, I talked to Jeff Alton yesterday, and Jeff had gone and attended services down there, and he said a good 70, 80 people were attending on a hot August Sunday here in Virginia, and he talked to many of the people, and that was what he discovered, was that some people have left the church over this issue, over how the vestry was treated, but as far as he could tell, a majority are still there.
So, what does this tell us? That the accusations against Bishop Warner, the facts nobody seems to be disputing. The diocese is not responding to any press queries from anybody.
Jeff Alton. Jeff Alton, a member of the Diocese of Mid-Atlantic.
So the diocese and the ACNA provincial office is not talking about this. So we don't know whether the presentment against Bishop Warner was quashed in the Archbishop's office or is being passed on for review. We have no knowledge about any of that. Mm-hmm. But what we can say is that this is not a case of everybody walking out. It's I hate to put it this way because it may not make people happy, but this is like most of the Episcopal Church splits. Most of the parishes, not everyone, and I'm not talking about Fort Worth where everybody was kicked out at once, but across the U.S., say down here in Central Florida, when we had these things, most people just sit in the pew. They don't really get worked up about what the bishop is up to, what the national church is up to. They want to know what's, whether they're donuts at coffee hour. They want to know if it's a good sermon. They want to know if the children are having a good time in Sunday school.
Is the organ still in tune? Yeah.
Yeah. So the path of least resistance is almost always stay. So those who leave usually have good reason to leave, and many a time they're the most active and the most important members of the congregation in terms of, the old saw, 90%, 10% of the people do 90% of the work.
The core. Yeah.
If the 10% leave, they're the ones that left when the ACNA split, leaving the vast bulk in the middle.
Now, we first came upon this story from a Twitter account called Doma Whistleblower. I think that's right. And Jeff has investigated that, and he, from what he can determine, thinks that the Doma Whistleblower individual does not even belong to the diocese. Just maybe a person who knows somebody or knows the story. I don't know. We'll have to see some more. This story is always going to be developing. But here at the end of the story, we don't really know what the truth is.
Well, none of the facts that have been put forward, mind you, yes. Letters, he said, she said stuff, have been impeached that Doma whistleblowers brought out. Yeah. Some people have questioned his motives, his or her motives. Some have questioned this is an outsider looking in. As to what they're saying, I'm an outsider looking in. I have no skin in this game.
Yeah.
So, just take. We're trying to be. The truth is out there.
The truth is out there. Well, no, we're transparent. I mean, we want the true, full story. That's what our audience wants. It's not just what Kevin and George want, and that's why we could. You get updates throughout the weeks and months about different stories. Hopefully, that's why you're tuning in. It's just not because we're good-looking guys on camera. You want to see wrinkles? You come watch Unscripted. All right, George, on to the next story. We've covered the continuing church in different facets on Unscripted over our 20 years. I even went to one of their conventions in Georgia where they were bringing 3 different levels of the continuum together to have a powwow and to see if they can sign a concord and work together. And when I went there, I came out with a little less understanding of what they really wanted as a Anglican identity. And so when we see stories about the APA, the ACC, and other continuums, we don't often report it because there's a mishmash of what's really happening. And let's step back. George, what is the Anglican continuum?
Essentially, those are the churches that can draw their genesis, if you will, from the Conference of St. Louis, which was in the 1970s, I forget which year, after the ordination of women was permitted. Some people, some groups, some churches at that time withdrew from the Episcopal Church to form continuing churches, some under the retirement of Episcopal bishops, like Donald Davies, formerly of Fort Worth. And then these groups began to split. And the splits occurred along theological grounds and also personal grounds. Theological grounds, some people were all smells and bells, while others were low churchmen who were traditional in their views on women's orders and scripture. Others, Fred didn't like Phil, and Phil was now the bishop. Well, I couldn't stand Phil, so we're going to start our own church, and so on and so forth. Some of these were really personal. I know that's vulgar to say it that way, but some of them personally driven.
It was, because when I was at Georgia at their thing, the laity was fine, but there was so much animosity at the cleric level and the bishop level. I was like, it was uncomfortable. Yeah. You're dinging away over there.
Yeah, so there we have it. And over the years, we've had the merge, then they fell apart, merge, fell apart. But they've not really taken off. It's in many ways, it was like the Anglican Ordinariate. Had a great deal of initial promise, very clergy heavy in their initial run, but then just never seemed to go anywhere. So that the Anglican Ordinariate is a nice little boutique arrangement that really, I don't mean to be dismissive of it, but has no heft to it at this stage. It's just,
I think that's fair. In fact, we interviewed Chandler Jones on Unscripted many eons ago, maybe 10 years ago. And, we're open to see what you guys have, but, you're not always going to appear on Anglican Ink stories or Anglican Unscripted stories for a myriad of reasons. Some of them are your own fault. But we do have a story here we're going to report with Archbishop Chandler Jones has deposed Bishop Robert Giffith of the Diocese of the Central and Western States. Robert Giffith, if you just remember, has taken on Calvin Robinson. And so this is a story that's notable enough for us to report on, George.
Yeah, on August 1st, Archbishop Jones announced that he was in the process of deposing Bishop Giffin from his episcopal orders, because Bishop Giffin had indicated that he wasn't happy with the way things were going and might be leaving. Bishop Giffin responded the next day by saying he and his diocese, Western and Central States, were withdrawing from the APA. Now, the social media reason, things that are said on social media by many of the players, was that the APA has been in communication with the Anglican Catholic Church about merging. And the APA's top leaders, Jones and company, want a continuing church that's smells and bells and, just to the nth degree. Good old high octane Anglo-Catholicism.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Giffin wants a church, a continuing church that is open to old-fashioned evangelicals, traditional evangelicals, one that stands firm on the Scripture, on opposition to women's orders, that rejects the current woke culture, but is a place where a variety of churchmanships are welcome. And evidently, this is the public reason that they fell out, because the Anglican Catholic Church is not open to that variety of churchmanship.
I could say one is one stream, one is two stream, none are three stream.
Or four stream, or five stream.
Yeah.
Well, and then we have the unspoken stuff, which is that Giffen basically came on my radar in the Calvin Robinson affair when he alone among the bishops of any denomination stood up and essentially offered a lifeline to Calvin Robinson. When the REC was forced when its arm was twisted to drop Calvin Robinson because it was bad press, bad image to have this fellow.
No, he was unchristian, I read.
Oh, that he was unchristian, the Archbishop said.
Yeah.
Giffen stepped in, defended Robinson, and is in talks with him. I don't know where things stand right now with his parish in Grand Rapids, Robinson's parish in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and Giffen, but they've certainly been in communication. If the APA wants to merge with the ACC would rather not do it if they're going to bring back Calvin Robinson into the fold.
Yeah.
And Giffen is not willing to go back on his word and his support to Robinson. So Giffen and I think Jones are both operating on principle. Liturgical principle, or my word is my bond principle, and this is my vision versus that's your vision. Mm-hmm. So the new diocese of the central and western states, it's not going to be a diocese because it has an average Sunday attendance of less than 1,000, and I think less than 10 congregations. Once it passes those marks, then it can set itself up as a freestanding diocese. So this is a work in process.
It is.
Is this going to change the Anglican world? No, but it probably would be a welcome addition to have the voice of Bishop Giffen in the councils of the churches, because he's shown himself to be a man of integrity. I'm not saying Jones isn't, but on the Calvin Robinson affair, Giffen certainly comes out one of the few people coming out smelling well.
Yeah, well, I bet Jones, he's certainly a man of integrity, and it's just one of those stories. You've hit our radar. We do wish the best for your church and your provinces, but we also want to see the band get back together, don't we, George? So let's see if that works so way out. Down to our fifth and maybe last. Yeah, go ahead.
Next year in Jerusalem, one day.
One day. That's right. Good point. All right, let's move on here. The U.S. Supreme Court is currently considering a petition to revisit its landmark decision of Obergefell and Hodges, which established the constitutional right of same-sex marriage, even though the Constitution says nothing about same-sex marriage. The court at that time in 2015 found it in there somehow. Now let's just back up a little bit. I did a little thought experiment with Grok. And I love to play with AI. It's part of my retirement now. And I asked Grok and ChatGPT, in the last 15 years, can you give me an example of when a slippery slope was not a fallacy? Do you want to know what the number one response from Grok was? Number one was same-sex marriage led to transgendered surgeries. Oh man, that is so not. You're going to get yourself deleted, Grok. You can't say that type of thing. Even in 2020, even with Trump as president, you're probably not allowed to say that. So, I have found much not to like about same-sex marriage. I understand the concept, but The current divorce rate in America among lesbian same-sex couples is at 73%. Don't get that. Not as many men are getting married, so the statistics are still like 58%. It's not that bad as lesbian. And so I don't know how you go and revisit and say if it's good or bad if you're the U.S. Supreme Court, if you already said it's constitutional.
Well, the issue is Kim Davis, who was a Kentucky County Court clerk who was jailed for refusing to issue same-sex marriage licenses, jailed for contempt, because she says it violated her religious beliefs. She's asking the court to review its ruling. And as of to this morning, the court is considering a petition for review. It has not granted it, so it may not. And with Chief Justice Roberts, who is a political creature and not someone of whom I have much regard, well, I'll leave it there. I doubt they'll take this. They'll kick the can down the road, just as they kicked the can on Roe versus Wade for years.
Yeah.
Now, from a legal perspective, from a lawyer's perspective, Obergefell was a really bad legal decision. It just basically made up something that wasn't there.
Roe v. Wade, same thing.
So that this was one of the last gasps of the activist court years where the judges write laws. Mm-hmm. We're moving into an era where the judges say, the Supreme Court at any rate, is saying, what did the law say? Not what do we want it to say. So I'll play a thought game. The conservative group on the court would be happy to get rid of this really bad decision. It's an embarrassing legal decision. But the political side of the court says we can't do this because we'll unsettle the political status quo. We'll introduce, Donald Trump doesn't want the midterms to be about gay marriage. He wants it to be about the economy, about this, that, and the other. So the Supreme Court will probably eventually take this case once it's quiet. And when they make a decision, they'll throw out Obergefell and basically say it's up to the states because it is the states who determine what a marriage is, not the federal government. Federal government recognizes marriages through its various laws, but those definitions come from the states traditionally because there's nothing. Well, that's the argument. So what the Supreme Court will probably do when they overturn it, they'll say, yes, but states can still change their laws to have it. And so California will immediately change its laws to make sure it is enshrined in their documents. Well, a place like Florida, they say, well, we're not ready for this and we're not going to do it. And the question is, will Florida be compelled to recognize a California gay marriage for states' purposes? I don't think the court's ready to open that door yet, to fight that fight.
No, because before marriage, we had civil unions, and that was kind of an agreed upon. Even in the religious structures, most denominations said, if we're going to go anywhere, civil unions is a safe place to be, where there's a legal representation at a legal level for these couples. It's not marriage. We're not redefining what a man is. We're not going to redefine what a woman is. We're not going to redefine what marriage is. But we're willing to meet you halfway and set up a legal structure for you. And is the court willing to step back to civil unions at a federal level and allow states to have their own realm? I don't know.
Well, it's essentially what the fight that we're going over immigration enforcement right now. Because the former administration let in 10 plus million people without any approval of the government or the people, or by, and this could be said of England as well, that the government, through no popular decision or vote, decided to remove its borders. Now we're having people removed. And everybody's, oh yes, get rid of the rapists, get rid of this guy, get rid of that guy. But what about the nice man with his taco truck, or the guy who comes and mows the grass?
Or your doctor, or your pastor. Yeah.
Well, but the thing is, we can't have the law must be, justice is the statue of justice has a blindfold.
Yeah.
Blindfold, because we can't determine, well, this is a nice guy, so we're not going to enforce the law, and versus a bad guy, we're really going to enforce the law. There's a local case in the United States, because it's a slow summer. The daughter of a Korean priest in the Diocese of New York, who's a sophomore at Purdue University, went in to get her visa renewed, and she didn't leave the court hearing because she had overstayed her visa for 2 years.
2 years?
2 years.
Wow.
And the Episcopal Diocese of New York went into hyper-hysteria, saying, oh, this is terrible, this is the daughter of a priest, and this, that, and the other. I have a great deal of sympathy for somebody whose child has screwed up and done something, not done what they should have done.
We have daughters, we know.
but by the same token, the Episcopal Church doesn't have a right to say, okay, this is one of the nice people who the law shouldn't apply to. Either you change the laws or you apply them equally. This is the problem we're seeing, and the people who are in England are telling us about a two-tier systems of justice. A native Briton is not allowed to parade down the street, with his Union Jack, or say certain things or do certain things, while a newly off the boat Muslim immigrant can do X, Y, and Z and is protected by the police. So the same crime performed by people of different religions or different skin tones is treated differently. And that's not how the law should work.
No. In fact, if you are in England and you are a street preacher and you offend somebody, preaching down the street, you can and most likely will be arrested. However, if you listen about 5 blocks down, you're going to hear a loudspeaker coming from a mosque. And 5 times a day, prayers come from that mosque. And many times those prayers are very offensive to Christianity, to Western culture, to Israel, and you're not allowed to complain about it. In fact, your complaining about it is offensive to the Islamic people, and you will be arrested again.
So we're reaping the benefit of a whole generation of dreadful political leaders, of dreadful judges, just people who allowed sympathy to overcome justice and the rule of law. And now we're paying the consequences of it.
Yeah. Well, you talked about toxic empathy a week or two ago. And that's what this is we're using feelings over reason. Feelings have trumped reason, logic, science, Western standards, morality, and feelings are going to be the thing that kills us as a society that has built itself up over 2,000 years as a protector of all rights. So, pretty sad. Let's move on to our last story. And boom, I have 5 stories here. We've covered those. But Kevin, can we talk about Howard Stern? Please. I like Howard Stern. I don't like that guy. He is, in my definition of entertainers, disgusting. And I remember watching a YouTube video where he had interviewed 2 rock and roll female performers, and he had them use sex toys on his show. And I'm like, how is this entertaining? How is this anything that belongs in the culture of modern 20th century America?
Well, Howard Stern, at one time in the 80s and early 90s, you couldn't go outside. If there was a truck driver going by or a work crew, you would hear Howard Stern, and he had over 20 million people listening to him. Mm-hmm. And he took on all comers. He was vulgar. He was coarse. He was evil. He was cruel. He was anti-establishment. Everybody was subject to his ire. Then he basically went crazy. And now he's got less than 100,000 listeners. And the Sirius subscription radio network in the U.S. is basically not going to renew his contract. And it's not so much a victory for decency, but I think it's because Stern lost his audience.
Yeah.
20 million down to 100,000, not because he cleaned up his act or not because he got even more vulgar. It's far worse, but the internet basically took away a lot of his shock value. But also Stern became woke. He turned on his audience and began to attack his audience. That they're the problem. You're stupid for listening. You're stupid for not listening. And that's essentially what the Episcopal Church did to its membership over the past 50 years, attacking, the bourgeois morality and values, and we've got to be more trendier than thou. So, I don't need this nonsense. I'll go across the street where my children can be educated. I can be nurtured. I don't need to be hectored by some sanctimonious scold.
Yeah,
and that's what. Well, that's what the Episcopal Church's leadership is these days, are a bunch of sanctimonious scolds on whatever issue it is. Sean Rowe, the current presiding bishop, is pretty much of a non-entity, and he'll come out with statements on immigration and this and that, and nobody cares because we know exactly what he's going to say. And it's like Howard Stern, except the Episcopal Church's audience was never 20 million.
No, but now Sean Rowe, I can't believe I'm defending him, has made less press statements than the previous two presiding bishops of the Episcopal Church. He seems less reactive to Israel than, in my humble opinion.
Kevin, the other thing is that we're not reporting every single movement and thing that he said.
Okay.
See, the wonderful thing about Catherine Jefferts Schori is she couldn't move without saying or do something that was dramatic.
True.
Sean Rowe was in Mississippi this past weekend, retracing the steps of a pilgrimage to celebrate 80 years since the murder of Emmett Till, some civil rights thing.
Sure.
Do you know how much news coverage that got?
I bet the ENS reported on it.
The ENS put out a release, but it made the secular press, crickets. Anglican Unscripted, Anglican Inc., crickets. I mean, it's just, sometimes there are things that we just will not burden people with. So, in other words, it's, what do we need? We try to put the voices of people who matter out in front.
Sure.
And that's not always the people dressed in purple up at the pulpit.
No. Well, I mean, Anglican Unscripted is about reporting on the newsmakers. And we try not to be the newsmakers. That's a secret for future reporters out there. All right, George, that's 52 minutes of pure Anglican news. We've done it. 6 stories for you guys to love. Now, if you made it this far, I want you to go to the comment section and tell us any corrections you have to the stories. I think we got all the names right this week. I was actually going to put together a little poster with all the names and diagrams and what diocese people belong to, because I forget all the time. And to be upfront about this, I went to college with a person named Stuart Wood. Okay, and so when I hear it, it just doesn't. I'm not going to get it through. It just, I won't correct it. It doesn't. I don't hear that. So that's why we're unscripted.
And I went to college with Steve Rook. Or actually, he pronounced it Roosh. But
did he really? Oh no!
He had a little E at the end, so we said Roosh. So, oh my! Synapses are all going there. Yeah.
Our audience is a victim of our dementia. I'm Kevin Kallsen.
And I'm George Conger. And you've been watching episode 978?
928.
It's 928 of Anglican Unscripted.